week, guy knocks on my door. He says to me, they're starving in Kosovo. I said, I've been here all day, pal. Here's a quick impression.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Wasden Wednesday, December the 27th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the military shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and SEAL Team 6. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I shouldn't change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, the military shorts.
Saudi Arabia is allegedly trying to block a global deal to fight climate change at the UN. Right in the deal, countries are wanting to call for a phasing out of fossil fuels in order to combat climate change. Saudi flat out opposes this and has allegedly been skillful at blocking discussions and delaying talks. And this is all 198 nations at the UN have to agree to a climate deal in order for it to take effect. Also, other countries are trying to shape the deal. The US wants caveats in the fossil fuel phase-out language, while China and India are opposing language that would single out coal. Meanwhile, Iran and Russia are seeking protection for natural gas, while Iraq has said that ending gas and oil could devastate countries that rely on them for income and are asking that the deal include more aid from wealthier countries. But this is Saudi Arabia stands alone in their opposition. Even their neighbor, the UAE, who is also a major oil producer, has taken the stance that transitioning away from fossil fuels is essential. And that split can be explained by the UAE making a great effort to be a global destination and to have an economy that is multifaceted, while Saudi has struggled to produce an economy beyond oil. But follow to stay in the loop.
Medal of Honor recipient U.S. Marine Corps Major J.R. Vargas, while serving as commanding officer in action against enemy forces on May 1, 1968, though suffering from wounds he had incurred while relocating his unit under heavy enemy fire the preceding day. Major Vargas combined his company with 2 other companies and led his men in an attack on the fortified village of Didao. Exercising expert leadership, he maneuvered his Marines across 700 meters of open rice paddy while under intense enemy mortar, rocket, and artillery fire, and obtained a foothold in 2 hedgerows on the enemy perimeter, only to have elements of his company become pinned down by the intense enemy fire. Leading his reserve platoon to the aid of his beleaguered men, Vargas inspired his men to renew their relentless advance while destroying a number of enemy bunkers. Again wounded by grenade fragments, he refused aid as he moved about the hazardous area, reorganizing his unit into a strong defensive perimeter at the edge of the village. Shortly after the objective was secured, the enemy commenced a series of counterattacks and probes, which lasted throughout the night, but were unsuccessful as the gallant defenders stood firm in their hard-won enclave. Reinforced the following morning, the Marines launched a renewed assault through Didao on the village of Bintu, to which the enemy retaliated with a massive counterattack, resulting in hand-to-hand combat. Vargas remained in the open, encouraging and rendering assistance to his Marines when he was hit for a 3rd time in the 3-day battle. Observing his battalion commander sustain a serious wound, he disregarded his excruciating pain, crossed the fire-swept area, and carried his commander to a covered position, then resumed supervising and encouraging his men while simultaneously assisting in organizing the battalion's perimeter defense. God bless J. Vargas and God bless our vets.
The UK's new 6th-generation fighter jet is finally here. It should be ready by 2035 to replace the Typhoon. This is Tempest. This new aircraft is the future of air superiority and has a range of features that make it different. With the all-new swarming technology, it will have the ability to control drones and fly unmanned. This will make it fearless, as there will be no need for a pilot. But Tempest will change the game with artificial intelligence. It will be able to share important data and messages with friendly aircraft, meaning it can team up and fly perfectly to destroy any enemy. It's powered by adaptive cycle engines. These engines use composite materials and efficient technology to make sure the aircraft is light and stays at the correct temperature. However, these engines will be deep within the fuselage to reduce Tempest's radar and infrared signatures, making it the most stealth aircraft to exist. But what about its arsenal? Well, it will use directed energy weapons that are one of a kind.
The F-35 fighter jet is considered dominant over its counterparts due to its advanced technology, versatility, and stealth capabilities. It is designed to excel in air-to-air combat, air-to-ground strikes, intelligence gathering, and electronic warfare. The F-35's advanced sensor fusion and information sharing capabilities also give it an edge in situational awareness and decision-making. Additionally, its stealthy design allows it to operate with a reduced risk of detection. These features contribute to its reputation as a dominant, multi-role fighter jet. The F-35 program also involves international collaboration with multiple countries, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Italy, Australia, and others, participating in its development and procurement. This collaboration allows for shared costs, technology transfer, and interoperability among partner nations.
In the heat of battle, Staff Sergeant Nicky Bacon faces a test of courage and leadership. Under enemy fire, he rallies his men, leading a daring assault on a hostile bunker. Grenades in hand, he single-handedly destroys the threat. Chaos ensues as machine gun fire strikes his fellow soldier, including the platoon leader. With unwavering resolve, Bacon steps into command, charging the hostile gun position and eliminating the enemy crew. His bravery doesn't stop there. When the 3rd platoon joins, their leader falls wounded. Bacon takes the helm. 4 more enemy soldiers meet their end by his hand. An anti-tank weapon falls silent under his assault. Ignoring the hailstorm of enemy gunfire, he climbs atop a tank, directing fire into enemy lines while the wounded are evacuated. His extraordinary efforts paved the way forward, allowing his company to neutralize the enemy and rescue their trapped brothers. Staff Sergeant Nicky Bacon, this is his Medal of Honor story. Remember him.
He was a star athlete in high school, but dropped out to join the Marine Corps, his mother reluctantly signing the 17-year-old's permission papers. He was Private First Class James LaBelle, and he would celebrate his 19th birthday, storming the beaches of Iwo Jima with the 5th Marine Division. LaBelle was part of a platoon tasked with taking the well-fortified Japanese stronghold at Nishi Ridge. After days of intense fighting, the men took respite in a cave as the setting sun cast a blinding glow over their position. "Incoming," yelled LaBelle, as a grenade rolled alongside 3 Marines. Instead of running, LaBelle threw his body over it, saving his 3 buddies. It would take 3 Marine divisions and 6 weeks of intense fighting for the island to be secured. James LaBelle posthumously received the Medal of Honor in 1946 and in 2013 was awarded his high school diploma.
How did this pilot survive ejecting at supersonic speed? Taking off from a base in North Carolina with another F-15, Brian Udall and his weapons officer began what seemed like a normal training mission. The F-15s were chasing each other in increasingly tight circles, but things quickly took a turn whilst going the speed of sound. Udall realized he was losing control, falling from 17,000 feet to just 10,000 in 5 seconds. Time was running out. Udall and his navigator pulled the ejection seat handles, unsure if their parachutes would even deploy before hitting the water. Except his parachute did deploy, at only 1,000 feet, pulling his helmet off and causing severe injuries to his head and face. Just as Udall was about to land in the ocean, his ejection system triggered a one-man life raft, but when he tried to climb in, his legs didn't respond, so he had to try to get into the raft, using just one arm before the freezing ocean took him. After a final attempt, he succeeded. He was rescued. The other pilot did not survive.
Why would 2 U.S. Navy Phantoms try to shoot down their own U-2 spy plane? The bizarre incident occurred a few years after the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the United States had ended its overflights over Cuban territory, where they were in range of the island's deadly S-75 surface-to-air missiles. Reconnaissance missions continued, but they remained outside Cuban airspace. That is, until July 28, 1966. That day, a U-2 pilot was flying towards the island when the aircraft's oxygen supply system failed, putting him into a state of hypoxia. Unresponsive, the U-2 began heading directly for the island, which led U.S. military leaders to believe another international crisis was about to break out. Frantic, they scrambled 2 F-4 Phantoms to shoot it down. But as powerful as the Phantoms were, they couldn't reach the U-2, and so it continued cruising over the island before finally running out of fuel and crashing over Bolivia. The wreckage was found by an astonished Bolivian farmer and later identified by U.S. officials.
Early Friday, U.S. airstrikes at 2 sites in eastern Syria linked to Iran after recent attacks on American troops in the region. It happened near the town of Abu Kamal, which sits on the border with Iraq. Pentagon officials say it targeted 2 locations, including weapons and ammunition storage areas. A senior defense official and a senior military official tell CBS News the strikes were carried out by F-16 fighter jets. They say it was in defense of U.S. forces, separate from support of Israel. Since the Hamas attacks, U.S. forces operating in Iraq and Syria have come under increased rocket attacks by Iranian-backed militias. Just Thursday, U.S. officials say there were 3 more attacks on U.S. forces, a total of 19 since October 17th. The escalation prompted President Biden this week to issue this warning to Iran's leader.
My warning to the Ayatollah was that if they continue to move against those troops, we will respond, and he should be prepared.
Years ago in Combat Handguns magazine, I did an article on ankle holsters for backup. And I later got to meet 2 men who said that article had saved their lives, that it had inspired them to get a 2-inch .38 and an ankle holster. One of them was a police officer in the Carolinas. He was carrying a Colt Agent .38. The assassin who came up to the side of his car, pretending to ask for directions, had kind of triggered his alarms. The holster that he was carrying on duty at that time had required a rock-back movement to clear, and the way his patrol car seat was, there wasn't enough play to rock back. And he had realized that and had the mental plan, if I need a gun while I'm seated behind the wheel of my patrol car, I'm going to the ankle. As he saw the man approach him and, he got a bad eye vibe from him, he slipped his hand onto the gun. And when that guy whipped out a shotgun and opened fire, he was able to put 6 for 6 into that man and stop the threat and save his own life.
December 1941, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, General George S. Patton took command of the 1st and 2nd Armored Divisions. His philosophy of battle: we shall attack and attack until we are exhausted, and then we shall attack again. He earned the moniker Old Blood and Guts. Patton's tactics led to the first major American victory in North Africa. In early 1945, Patton's army crossed the Rhine River and into Germany, capturing 10,000 miles of territory and helping to liberate the country from Nazi rule. His controversial critique of the Allies' denazification policies led to his removal from command. In a tragic twist of fate, Patton succumbed to injuries from an automobile accident in December 1945. His legacy, however, lives on as a testament to unyielding tenacity and military brilliance.
And that was the Military Shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of Steve Harvey.
Don't forget to pray. But don't be ashamed to pray. And don't be too proud to pray. Because prayer changes things. Prayer changes things. I don't care how dark it looks for you. I don't care what they done said to you. I don't care what the verdict is. I don't care what the haters say. Prayer changed things. I'm talking to a girl that I grew up on a block, man, that it didn't breed success. A lot of people on our block ain't here no more, man. I grew up in a place, man, that was you had to be something else, you come up out of there. Prayer changes things. I was told I would never be nothing. Prayer changes things. I flunked out of school. Prayer changes things. I'm on my third marriage, lost everything I've owned twice. I've been homeless and lived in a car for 3 years. Prayer changes things. The cool thing about prayer is the one thing that's available to everybody at any given time. Do you know that God ain't ever too busy for you? You know that God actually knows who you are? Do you know that God actually created you to converse with him? Do you know that God would actually love to hear from you? Do you know that I like talking to him even when I don't really need nothing? Quit playing with this here. You're not going to make it without God. If you've tried it so far, tell me how that's working out for you. It sucked, don't it? You need God. Don't you think I got here without him. I've needed him every step of the way. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't even be standing here today. Quit being ashamed about it and worrying about who looking. Go somewhere by yourself today and tell God you need some help. Tell him that you're just tired of trying to figure it out for yourself. You can't be tripping with my walk with him because my path ain't been like yours. This is my version of being saved. All you got to do is get your own version. You ain't got to change. God work with you. God take anybody that want to be saved, and he saved. So just like old people used to say, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody that can save anybody. Two things, my dream and my faith. Faith is the belief in things that you cannot see. You can never lose faith. That's the key. You have to believe in something that you can't see. You have to believe when you don't see no way how. You have to buckle down and keep believing. God is always coming. Here's the deal. The moment you ask God for something, he boxes it up and he ships it to you. Here's the problem with the package. He never gives you the date that it's going to arrive. It's going to come. He just don't tell you when. If he told you when, it would destroy the relationship that's required to have an abundant life, which is faith. If God told you you were going to be rich in August of 2021, do you know how crazy you would talk to people from now until then? Because you know on August 21, I'm going to be rich. But he don't tell you when the package is going to arrive. So here's the deal. He wants you to stay in faith to receive the package, because he only delivers to Faith Street. If you step off over here to I Don't See How Boulevard, he don't ship there. If you get over here to I Don't See How Circle, he does not ship there. He only sends the boxes to Faith Street. So when he sends it and you've moved off Faith Street, the package got to go back. It's just like UPS or the post office. If they send you a box and you ain't home, they take it back. That's how it works, man. Let me tell y'all something. Being successful is not a magic trick. You just have to learn the principles of success. I ain't got no degree. I got nothing like that to tell you about. I didn't finish school. I flunked out of school. I'm on my third marriage. Lost everything I owned twice. Been homeless, lived in the car. I am telling you, your education ain't got nothing to do with it. Nah, man, it's your dreams and visions. A man without a dream or vision shall perish. It's what God puts in your imagination for you to have. Everything God wants you to have, he puts it in your imagination. Albert Einstein said imagination is everything. It's the preview to life's coming attractions. Everything you imagine is God showing you a preview of a coming attraction he has for you. And he puts it in your imagination so you can see what he got for you. So if you've been imagining that you're going to be rich one day, it's because God wants you to be rich. Now, when you going to ask him for it, and are you going to wait for it to happen? Or are you going to lose faith? How you know what God's will is? It all happens at an appointed time, but you have to stay in faith for the appointed time to happen for you. I've been wanting to be on TV since I was 10 years old. You know how old I was before I got on TV? 28 years after I wrote it on the paper. I won't be on TV. It took me 28 years to get on TV. But it happened at an appointed time. I just never gave up the faith. I kept going because I didn't know how to quit. Because I know if I quit, it cannot happen. If you stay with it, you have no idea what can happen for you. You can't quit because get hard. This dude that lost his legs, he's still funky with it. You can't quit because you got your leg. What you tripping for? You can't quit, man. You got to stay with it. There's somebody having it way harder than you.
And that was a little bit of Steve Harvey. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the 33 strategies of war.
And the circuit of communications by which orders, information, and decisions would circulate back and forth. He was dependent on that circuit to give him control of the situation and allow him to execute his strategy. The first links in the chain of command were Stopford and Hammersley. Both men were terrified of risk, and Hamilton failed to adapt himself to their weakness. His order to reach Tekatepe was polite, civilized, and unforceful, and Stopford and Hammersley interpreted it according to their fears. They saw Tekatepe as a possible goal to aim for once the beaches were secured. The next links in the chain were the colonels, who were to lead the assault on Tekatepe. They had no contact with Hamilton on his island or with Stopford on his boat, and Hammersley was too overwhelmed to lead them. They themselves were terrified of acting on their own and maybe messing up a plan they had never understood. They hesitated at every step. Below the colonels were officers and soldiers who, without leadership, were left wandering on the beach like lost ants. Vagueness at the top turned into confusion and lethargy at the bottom. Success depended on the speed with which information could pass in both directions along the chain of command, so that Hamilton could understand what was happening and adapt faster than the enemy. The chain was broken, and Gallipoli was lost. When a failure like this happens, when a golden opportunity slips through your fingers, you naturally look for a cause. Maybe you blame your incompetent officers, your faulty technology, your flawed intelligence. But that is to look at the world backward. It ensures more failure. The truth is that everything starts from the top. What determines your failure or success is your style of leadership and the chain of command that you design. If your orders are vague and half-hearted, by the time they reach the field, they will be meaningless. Let people work unsupervised and they will revert to their natural selfishness. They will see in your orders what they want to see, and their behavior will promote their own interests. Unless you adapt your leadership style to the weaknesses of the people in your group, you will almost certainly end up with a break in the chain of command. Information in the field will reach you too slowly. A proper chain of command and the control it brings you is not an accident. It is your creation, a work of art that requires constant attention and care. Ignore it at your peril. By Xenophon. For what the leaders are, that as a rule will the men below them be. Remote control. In the late 1930s, U.S. Brigadier General George C. Marshall, 1880 to 1958, preached the need for major military reform. The Army had too few soldiers, they were badly trained, current doctrine was ill-suited to modern technology, the list of problems went on. In 1939, President Franklin D. Roosevelt had to select his next Army Chief of Staff. The appointment was critical. World War II had begun in Europe, and Roosevelt believed that the United States was sure to get involved. He understood the need for military reform, so he bypassed generals with more seniority and experience and chose Marshall for the job. The appointment was a curse in disguise, for the War Department was hopelessly dysfunctional. Many of its generals had monstrous egos and the power to impose their way of doing things. Senior officers, instead of retiring, took jobs in the department, amassing power bases and fiefdoms that they did everything they could to protect. A place of feuds, waste, communication breakdowns, and overlapping jobs, the department was a mess. How could Marshall revamp the Army for global war if he could not control it? How could he create order and efficiency? Some 10 years earlier, Marshall had served as the assistant commander of the infantry school at Fort Benning, Georgia, where he had trained many officers. Throughout his time there, he had kept a notebook in which he recorded the names of promising young men. Soon after becoming Chief of Staff, Marshall began to retire the older officers in the War Department and replace them with these younger men whom he had personally trained. These officers were ambitious. They shared his desire for reform, and he encouraged them to speak their minds and show initiative. They included men like Omar Bradley and Mark Clark, who would be crucial in World War II, but no one was more important than the protege Marshall spent the most time on, Dwight D. Eisenhower. The relationship began a few days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, when Marshall asked Eisenhower, then a colonel, to prepare a report on what should be done in the Far East. The report showed Marshall that Eisenhower shared his ideas on how to run the war. For the next few months, he kept Eisenhower in the War Plans Division and watched him closely. The two men met every day, and in that time, Eisenhower soaked up Marshall's style of leadership, his way of getting things done. Marshall tested Eisenhower's patience by indicating that he planned to keep him in Washington instead of giving him the field assignment that he desperately wanted. The colonel passed the test. Much like Marshall himself, he got along well with other officers, yet was quietly forceful. In July 1942, as the Americans prepared to enter the war by fighting alongside the British in North Africa, Marshall surprised one and all by naming Eisenhower commander in the European Theater of Operations. Eisenhower was by this time a lieutenant general, but was still relatively unknown. And in his first few months in the job, as the Americans fared poorly in North Africa, the British clamored for a replacement. But Marshall stood by his man, offering him advice and encouragement. One key suggestion was for Eisenhower to develop a protege, much as Marshall had with him, a kind of roving deputy who thought the way he did and would act as his go-between with subordinates. Marshall's suggestion for the post was Major General Bradley, a man he knew well. Eisenhower accepted the idea, essentially duplicating the staff structure that Marshall had created in the War Department. With Bradley in place, Marshall left Eisenhower alone. Marshall positioned his protégés throughout the War Department, where they quietly spread his way of doing things. To make the task easier, he cut the waste in the department with utter ruthlessness, reducing from 60 to 6 the number of deputies who reported to him. Marshall hated excess. His reports to Roosevelt made him famous for his ability to summarize a complex situation in a few pages. The 6 men who reported to him found that any report that lasted a page too long simply went unread. He would listen to their oral presentations with rapt attention, but the minute they wandered from the topic or said something not thought through, he would look away, bored, uninterested. It was an expression they dreaded. Without saying a word, he had made it known that they had displeased him, and it was time for them to leave. Marshall's 6 deputies began to think like him and to demand from those who reported to them the efficiency and streamlined communication style he demanded of them. The speed of the information flow up and down the line was now quadrupled. Marshall exuded authority, but never yelled and never challenged men frontally. He had a knack for communicating his wishes indirectly, a skill that was all the more effective since it made his officers think about what he meant. Brigadier General Leslie R. Groves, the military director of the project to develop the atom bomb, once came to Marshall's office to get him to sign off on $100 million in expenditures. Finding the chief of staff engrossed in paperwork, he waited while Marshall diligently compared documents and made notes. Finally, Marshall put down his pen, examined the $100 million request, signed it, and returned it to Groves without a word. The general thanked him and was turning to leave when Marshall finally spoke. "It may interest you to know what I was doing. I was writing the check for $3.52 for grass seed for my lawn." The thousands who worked under Marshall, whether in the War Department or abroad in the field, did not have to see him personally to feel his presence. They felt it in the terse but insightful reports that reached them from his deputies, in the speed of the responses to their questions and requests, in the department's efficiency and team spirit. They felt it in the leadership style of men like Eisenhower, who had absorbed Marshall's diplomatic yet forceful way of doing things.
And that was the next part of Chapter 5, Avoid the Snares of Groupthink. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
We in our culture, this Decapolis of today, are often deaf to the voice of God. Deaf to this higher voice that speaks a divine spiritual truth, that speaks of eternal moral values, that speaks of the existence and demand and invitation of God. We're deaf to that voice. And therefore, what? We are inarticulate in our capacity to express these truths. Because we can't hear them, we can't speak them.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Ayn Rand Thought of the Day. Quote, "The United States, history's magnificent example of a country created by political theorists, has abandoned its own philosophy and is falling apart. As a nation, we are splintering into warring tribes, which, only by the fading momentum of a civilized tradition, are called economic pressure groups at present." Unquote. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 16 of SEAL Team 6.
16. Fish out of water.
Outside of the military, my situation would be feast or famine. While processing out of the Navy on a medical retirement, I received an offer to train the 1996 Summer Olympic security teams in Atlanta. $1,500 a week seemed like huge money to me then, especially compared to military pay. I left the Navy and took the job. Also, I trained the Federal Bureau of Prisons Special Operations and Response Teams and others. It involved a lot of travel. Charging $500 a day, I thought I'd get rich. In the tactical game, I was paid well for each assignment, but the assignments came and went. Between assignments, I struggled financially. Hoping for more stability, I became a police officer just north of Miami Beach in Hallandale Beach, Florida, a place known for its Greyhound racetrack and Canadian tourists. After more than half a year of training, I became a police officer, just like the ones who treated me well as a kid. While patrolling, I wore Revo sunglasses, made with NASA technology by the same Italian eyewear company, Luxottica, that owns Ray-Ban and Oakley. The Revos had the clearest lenses and the best polarized protection, and they stayed on comfortably. Because I was a rookie, a recruit training officer, RTO, rode in the patrol car with me. One day I spotted a stolen Cadillac driving in front of us. I called it in. Another patrol car joined me and we turned on our flashing lights. The stolen Cadillac pulled over. Just as it stopped, the passenger, a black kid in his late teens, bailed out and took off running. We stopped behind the stolen vehicle. My RTO jumped out of the passenger seat of our patrol car, ran to the stolen Cadillac, and apprehended the driver, an obese kid. After I opened my door on the driver's side, my feet hit the ground running. I chased the runner for what seemed like forever. Over shrubs and fences, underneath bushes. My ASP telescoping tactical baton fell out somewhere during the chase. The radio mic clipped to my lapel fell off and dragged behind me. I didn't lose my sunglasses, though. We ran through people's yards and ended up all the way in the next town, South Hollywood. Suddenly, I lost visual and audible contact with the runner. A man watering the grass in his front yard pointed to the back of his house. I snuck up behind the house, but the runner spotted me and took off again. Finally, as he ran across the middle of the street, I tackled him on the asphalt. A motorcycle police officer stopped and helped me. It felt good to catch the guy. "That's the longest foot chase I've ever heard of," the policeman said. If the runner hadn't been holding his pants up the whole time he was running, he could have outrun me. When I stood him up with the handcuffs on, his pants fell down. I took out a flexicuff, pulled his pants up, and zip-tied his belt loop to his handcuffs to keep his pants on. My RTO arrived with our patrol car. The kid turned and looked at my name tag. "You ain't going to beat me, Officer Wasden?" "Of course not. Why do you ask that?" "I just thought that's what you cops did. Beat us. That's why I was running." "Man, you got the wrong idea of cops." When I started to put him in the car, another officer actually pushed the kid into the vehicle. "Hey, take your hands off my prisoner," I said, "and don't touch him again." Later, I'd catch flack from some of the guys who'd been around a while. "You should have been tougher on the kid. Show him you don't run from cops. There's a way to put cuffs on somebody, then there's a way to put cuffs on somebody." I understood their point, but I didn't adhere to it. That wasn't my type of police work. It turned out that the fat kid had stolen the car. The runner was a mule, paid probably $20 or $30 a day to deliver crack, then carry the buyer's money back to the dealer. He had 3 or 4 pieces of the off-white colored rock on him. The dealer used kids under the age of 18 so they couldn't be prosecuted as adults. I put the fat driver in the back of my vehicle with the runner and drove away. "Why didn't you get your fat ass out and start running?" the runner said. "Nigga, please, you got caught by a white man," the fat kid argued. "What you talking about?" "This wasn't no ordinary white man. Every time I turned around, he was still coming." I smiled. At the Hallandale Beach Police Department, I processed the 2 suspects. Then I took them to the Broward County Sheriff's Department to drop them off at the jail. I noticed the runner's hands and knees were sliced up from my tackling him on the asphalt. He was going to need a couple of stitches. Since it's the arresting officer's job to take him to the hospital, that's what I did. After checking him in at the hospital, we had a 45-minute wait. Having missed lunch, I cuffed the kid to a railing and went to the McDonald's in the hospital. I returned and ate my quarter-pounder value meal. The kid looked at my food. "Are you hungry?" I asked. Not too bad." "When's the last time you ate something?" "I had some soup last night." "Oh, crap." I went back to McDonald's and bought him a quarter-pounder. When I returned, I asked, "If I'm nice enough to buy you a hamburger, am I going to have to chase your tail down if I take that handcuff off and let you eat like a human being?" "No, sir, Officer Wasden. I promise you, I ain't running again. I promise." "Just so you know, I'm tired of running, so if you run again, I may just shoot you." We chuckled. I took off the handcuffs and he thanked me. He gulped down his quarter-pounder. Then I went back and got him some more food. Finished eating, we sat in the emergency room. "You ain't like most police, is you?" he said. "More police are like me than you think." "I would have never thought a police officer would buy me something to eat." "You know what? If you went up to most police officers and asked them for food, they'd probably give it to you. They probably wouldn't give you money, but they'd at least give you a pack of crackers or something." "Thank you." He was very polite. Wouldn't stop thanking me. He seemed like a good kid, just in with the wrong crowd. And I felt good to be able to help him in that way, but I felt bad at how destitute his situation was. Later, when I saw him on the street, whatever he was doing, he made it a point to stop and wave at me. Occasionally, he came over and talked. For a couple of weeks after the big foot chase, my body paid for it. My neck and lower back were killing me. A police officer from North Miami Beach had been recommending over and over that I visit a chiropractor, but I blew her off. Now, I was desperate. I remembered Ambassador Negroponte's chiropractor. Finally, I went. The chiropractor evaluated me. "Compensatory to your gunshot wound, you've got an external foot rotation affecting your right hip. From your pelvis, it worked its way up to your neck. That is why you aren't sleeping well and experience constant pain." After 3 adjustments, I slept all the way through the night for the first time in years, nearly pain-free, just by visiting the chiropractor twice a month. Wow! After all the neurologists, orthopedic surgeons, and other doctors, a chiropractor gave me back my quality of life. At that point, I thought chiropractors were like massage therapists or something like that. I had no idea that they studied to become doctors. There really is something to this chiropractor thing. As a police officer, I didn't find a kid with the marks of beatings like the ones I'd received on a weekly basis as a child. If I had, there would have been no questions asked. That child would have been turned over to the authorities and the father would go straight to jail. Financially, as a single father, I realized I couldn't make it as a police officer. $42,000 a year went far in Jessup, Georgia, but not in Hallandale Beach, Florida. The world's leading manufacturer of body armor for military and law enforcement, Point Blank Body Armor, part of Point Blank Body Armor, PACA, Protective Apparel Corporation of America, offered me a job in Tennessee. $75,000 a year would go far, especially in Tennessee. So I left law enforcement and took the job. Living in a small town, I felt rich. Blake fit in well at his new school, and life went smoothly. As part of promoting the body armor, Point Blank assigned me to teach SWAT to Kane Kosugi, a Japanese-American martial arts actor, for a popular Japanese TV series called Muscle Ranking, Kiniku Banzuke. Kane wore a special mission and response team, SMART vest, that I had designed. He was a hard worker who learned fast. With Point Blank, I had to travel internationally all the time. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Paris, and wherever there was a huge military or police contract. Blake stayed with friends while I was gone. When Point Blank Body Armor, PACA, changed hands, I didn't like the new management. I moved back to Jessup so Blake and I could be closer to my daughter Rachel. I had worked out a plan to train the United Arab Emirates police SWAT teams via a Switzerland contract. My friend Tom McMillan had secured a range for me in Folkestone, Georgia, to facilitate the training. It was going to be great.
I had never earned $5,000 a week before. I was looking forward to finally having my years of military training pay off big time. On September 11th, 2001, we were putting the final stages of the plan into effect when the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center were hit by terrorists. That changed everything, putting the training on hold. Looking for a temporary solution until the matter could be resolved, Brother Ron recommended a job to me. You'd be good at it. GMC car salesman. I had to do something, so I took it in order to put food on the table. To my surprise, I made more money selling cars than I had made doing anything else up to that point. The customers loved me. Blake settled into high school. I even dated. One date turned out to be a stalker. It wasn't funny. She would call me and say, "It usually takes you 20 minutes to get from work to home. Today it took you 35 minutes. What happened?" Are you serious? My cousin Sandy joked with me one night. "She's outside standing in your azaleas looking in your window." I laughed it off. Sandy laughed too. After I hung up, I thought maybe I'd better go check. The stalker wasn't in my azaleas, but she sat in her car a block away watching my house. I just couldn't pick the right woman. It was frustrating. On one occasion, I went on a date with an attractive woman. Feeling the vibes, I was ready for sex. It had been a while. While eating dinner at a restaurant, I asked, "What do you like to do? Have you read any good books lately?" "I haven't read anything since high school when I had to read." "What do you do for a hobby?" "I listen to my police scanner and watch wrestling." I kept a straight face. "Really?" "Yeah, listening to the scanner keeps me tied into the community, so I know who's getting in trouble and where all the excitement is. If there's going to be a big arrest or fire, I go and watch." Holy crap. And your other hobby is what? "Wrestling. I like Stone Cold Steve Austin." If she could have kept her mouth shut, she would have been great. After dinner, I took her home. Didn't even kiss her goodnight. She was upset. I am not going out on any more dates. There are no girls in Wayne County I really want to date. On a Saturday afternoon, January 19th, 2002, I was headed home in my truck with 2 chicken boxes from Sybil's Family Restaurant. People drive from 100 miles to eat Sybil's chicken. Blake and I had plans to eat chicken and watch Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which I had already rented. My cousin Edward called me up. "Deirdre and I are going out tonight. She's got a friend and we want you to come out with us." Classical ambush. No. 2 minutes later, Deirdre called. "Howard, please, I've never asked you for anything. Debbie just got out of a really bad marriage and she's going out with us, but she doesn't want to feel like the third wheel. Just show up for company. You're a fun-loving guy. I'll never ask you to do anything else again. I promise. Just do this for me." Total guilt trip. I was irritated, but I dropped off the chicken boxes. "Blake, I'm going on a date." "Really? I thought you weren't going to date." "Yeah, me too." Edward and Deirdre took me to Debbie's apartment. Deirdre told Debbie, "This is the guy I was telling you about who needs a date." Deirdre had set up Debbie and me. All 4 of us rode in one vehicle. I acted like, "Hey, I am Howard Wasden. You need to humble yourself before me. Show proper respect." She threw my attitude back at me. "Hey, I don't care who you are." Wow, that's different. And she actually speaks in complete sentences using words with more than 2 syllables. Where the hell did she come from? The 2 of us ended up having a great dinner, laughing a lot and enjoying our conversation and company. We even showed our appreciation to Edward by using words he could understand. I remember the first time my hand touched hers. We were watching a Sports Illustrated bloopers video with Deirdre and Edward. The spark of energy from that touch rushed through both of us. We continued our visit for a few minutes, and then I drove Debbie back to her apartment. When we arrived at her home, we continued our conversation inside. Our talking led to laughter. The laughter led to a connection. That connection led to kissing, and the kissing rocked my world. The chemistry was unlike any I had ever felt. I lost track of time, but I knew that if I was going to be a gentleman, I'd better leave. We were both blindsided. Neither of us was looking for a relationship. Neither of us wanted a relationship, but our guardian angels had put the two of us in the right place at the right time. We walked to the door to say goodnight. Leaving took all of my self-control. I had a great time tonight, I said. Me too. Why don't you give me a call tomorrow? I asked. Now, I had been raised in Scriven, Georgia by strict parents who wouldn't accept nothing less than gentlemanly behavior from me. It wasn't that I was no longer a gentleman. It's just that I was Howard Wasden. I didn't have to pick up a phone and call a woman. They called me. This girl had been raised to be a lady, though. I don't know how you were raised, but my mama raised me not to call boys. If you want to talk to me, you are going to have to call me. She closed the door. Wow. It hit me. Girls who call boys today just don't get it. They're missing being chased and the thrill of it. On the drive home, reality set in. The speed limit was 55 miles per hour, but I doubt I exceeded 45. I was embarrassed and disappointed in myself. Even though I was raised to be a gentleman, I had become arrogant. She was absolutely right. What is wrong with me? I knew better than to say, "Hey, I'm Howard Wasden. Give me a call." I respected her even more. Sunday, I waited all day. I started to call her several times, but I didn't call. Yeah, she'll call me. She never did. Monday morning, I called her. We went to lunch. When the weekend came, we dated. Every weekend after that, we dated. Until we got married. Although I'd sworn I'd never tie the knot again, Brother Ron married Debbie and me on January 17th, 2003. Even today, when we see him in public, he notices how happy we are together and makes the comment, "When I married you two, I used good glue." Car sales wasn't fulfilling, even though the good people of Wayne County bought from me, showing their love and appreciation. They knew me from growing up in their community and were thankful for my military service. I had thought about becoming a chiropractor. I tried working at a chemical plant. My old CIA friend Condor told me about a job at a security firm in Brazil. I probably would have ended up in the security field forever. Like other teen guys who leave the Navy, do security work until I'm too old or too dead. In October 2004, Debbie and I talked with my Veterans Affairs representative. They would pay for my college expenses to become a chiropractor. Debbie and I visited the university, but on the way back, I came up with all kinds of reasons I shouldn't do it. I won't be able to work full-time and go to school full-time. We'll have to tighten our budget. It's going to take a long time. I'll have to live near school until I graduate. A lot of driving back and forth. Debbie threw the BS flag. You can go the rest of your life being miserable, never feeling fulfilled, never finding a job you really like again, or you can just do this. The sooner you get started, the sooner you'll be done and you'll be happy with your occupation again. If you don't, you'll look back after 4 years and say, "If I'd gone to school, I'd be finished by now." I married the right woman. In January 2005 at Life University in Marietta, Georgia, I started school to become a chiropractor. Although I enjoyed my studies, a small percentage of my classmates were hippie crackpots who opposed medical doctors, needles, and medication. Even one of my professors told us, "I will not give CPR or mouth-to-mouth to someone who is dying." He would try to give the dying person a chiropractic adjustment, and that was it. A husband and wife who were both chiropractors had met and married while in school. 3 years after they graduated, the wife died from an ear infection because they refused to receive medical treatment for her. Simple antibiotics would have saved her life. Their attitude was that chiropractors had the only pure discipline to cure people. Their mantra was, "Innate will provide." They reminded me of the witch doctor who unsuccessfully tried to cure the boy I helped in Somalia. Most of my other classmates and professors didn't think this way, nor do chiropractors as a whole. It's the small percentage of crackpots who give all chiropractors a bad name. During my last year at school, my father had an abdominal aortic aneurysm. His abdominal aorta was blowing up like a balloon.
And that was chapter 16, Fish Out of Water, from SEAL Team 6. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States. Today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you to be honest, smart, and beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.